Sheets of rain fell, propelled by, sideways by screaming, howling wind, via the few trees bordering the abandoned road. It was almost midnight on the suburbs of a sleepy Midwestern city. Although there were no indications of, the planet was saturated with cold, and an intolerant German shepherd hobbled through a small alley shadows, ribs that are visible beneath his. His movements were like wet, tangled fur, weary and slow. Every stride is the result of several days, weeks without food and shelter. Hunger propelled him despite the cold biting into his bones. Low sniffing of his front snout among flipped garbage cans and strewn wrappers. Max used to be his name, but he was now simply another stray with no name. Nobody desired to see another soul abandoned by the globe while searching the alley for. A faint sound drifted beneath the scraps. The sound of the rain, barely perceptible. Gentle, strained, high-pitched shriek. He, flicking froze ears. There was once more. Not a cat's whine, not another dog's. Max's cry, a baby's wail. It was human. Head jerked toward the forest in the direction of a overgrowth in a dark spot close to the edge. He ran for the tree's paws, splattering in shallow pools, forcing his way through damp bush until he arrived at the sound concealed by a log, nearly concealed under branches, and it was a tiny white styrofoam box with leaves, wet and discolored by rain and muck. It moved a little in tandem with the infant's movement inside. He came carefully close. Smelling, the aroma touched his newborn skin, almost completely drenched in milk dread, and cold. An infant girl's face was covered by a tiny cloth. Her little hands were bluish, and her lips were pallid. Her cries were trembling, weakening something. Max came to life without anyone around. Without direction or justification, he took action, softly grasped the box's corner, used his teeth and started pulling it. He extracted it, inch by inch, from the bushes scuffing on the damp ground. Rain stung his skin as he slipped in the dirt. But he continued to pull everything. The path to the road's edge where headlights occasionally showed up in the before disappearing once more into the storm, after which he stood watch and yelled at. He barked at every vehicle that went by, all of the remaining strength in his loud's damaged body and frantic pleas. Lights would occasionally pause and slow down, but the storm was too strong for anyone to stop. There was a dog barking in the midst of nowhere. Yet another risk should be avoided. He thought that when he barked, his voice gave out and complained. When no one arrived, he coiled his thin trembling and circled the box. Encircle the infant inside the frame and press his dripping body up against the foam to protect it against the wind. Bowed his head and twitched his ears at each passing sound, protecting with wide open eyes. During the night, an unnamed dog, a child without a name and a world without, yet observed the appearance of love when it had lost nothing that night. The storm continued to roar, but Max didn't move as some guards are. Some hearts are born without training, and never gave up fighting, no matter how broken. To save another person's life, the storm had departed, leaving a soggy gray dawn in its wake. Heavy and low clouds continued to loom overhead. The worst, however, was over puddles. Leaves clung and the road shimmered to every surface, just as nature had closed for the night, and the earth was soaked and silently held its breath following a chaos-filled night. Grace Thompson, a quiet woman in her early 50s, pulled her raincoat on and went outside, of her umbrella in the driveway in one hand. With the other handbag, she had worked doing the morning shift at the nearby eatery for more than 20 years, the same path, the same beat, but this morning was anything from typical. When she got closer to the bend, right before the main route, she saw something strange in the separation close to the edge of the highway, of figures curled up and still, next to what appeared to be a plastic container. Grace peered at a dog that was completely saturated, bone, initially believing it to be dead, but then it hardly moved, so she accelerated. Her heart was racing as she got. The German caught her breath as she got near. Shepherd was tightly coiled around a. The sides of the white styrofoam box were dented in mud-stained paper scraps and wet leaves, and there were small footprints all over the place. The dog's ribs were clearly pressed up against. His body and hair shivered uncontrollably. but he remained stationary, head protectively leaning against it. Grace's eyes widened in the package. Was it food? Puppy litter? No. Then she heard a faint, muted sound. Weak sob, her stomach sinking, she hurried. He moved nearer, squatting next to the dog, raised his head feebly and gazed at her eyes and let out a low, broken bark that sounded like. He begged Grace to drop her umbrella, her hands shaking as she pulled. The boxes lit off, revealing a newborn inside. The baby girl's small lips hardly moved. Her skin was ice, and she gasped weakly. Her face was pale, and her tiny blanket was frigid. She was alive despite being wet through. Oh my God, Grace said softly, reaching out to her. Mouth she struggled to dial her phone. 9111 with hardly able fingers. Click the "This is an emergency" button. Discover a dog and a baby, I believe. He saved her, and sirens sounded within minutes. An ambulance reverberated throughout the morning, skidded on the slick pavement, and came to a stop. A police cruiser followed immediately behind. EMTs arrived quickly and wrapped the baby in, monitoring her vitals while wrapped in warm blankets. Grace couldn't hear the words being said. After looking into the box, one of them gazed up at Grace incredulously at his gaze. This dog kept her warm all night. Grace nodded when he asked, and he dragged her away. He led her to the road from the woods. The dog's shaking gaze remained motionless. The big object was carefully lifted and wrapped. Grace softly wrapped herself in a heavy rescue blanket, said, "You're a good boy," and rubbed his head. She mumbled as tears filled her eyes. "You're her angel." The infant daughter was subsequently stabilized and put in intensive. Medical professionals stated that she survived as a wonder if she had been located even an hour earlier. It could have been too late later. Named her Mara, which translates as miracle dog. Nameless was formerly known as the Guardian. News quickly spread. The local newspaper published the title, "A box baby is pulled by a stray dog into the street during a storm, saves lives." By pictures of the soaking puppy from that evening, and the infant in the arms of the medic. Twitter was ablaze with activity on social media. Facebook groups disseminated the narrative too. Not all heroes wear capes. For example, some people have 4 guardian angels on their paws. Ledsy had no house or collar, so he had to mirror into all those who were now aware of he was everything in the hospital story. The space was cozy and peaceful. Tiny Mirror was wrapped up in her beeping incubator with cozy pink blankets draped around it. Her chest was steadily rising and falling. She was referred to as the miracle by rhythm nurses. Baby, and they weren't lying after all. Only a few days of 24-hour care, warmth and sustenance. Mirror started to recuperate at a rate that even Grace saw the physicians every day, humming lullabies while seated next to her, offering small assurances. "You're safe. We have you now, sweetie." In a separate wing of the establishment at a Guardian, a nearby veterinary clinic, was taking care of himself. The veterinarians discovered indications of previous trauma, perhaps from maltreatment combined with severe malnourishment, as well as a serious respiratory infection. From the cold, he remained silent during the examination, eyes seeing everyone, but never. He didn't resist. He only responded when someone. His ears would perk up when he opened the door, as though he hoped to see her after both Guardian and Mira were deemed steady. Grace is still in shock by the revelation, yet affected sincerely accomplished something that few would anticipate, that she submitted documents to foster them both for a short time, not forever. She only informed the social worker until her request makes sense once more was accepted, and on the first evening she took them home. Something changed. Mira, curled up in her small crib close to the window in the living room, twitched and fussed. The Guardian gently patted his body. He sat, still slender but more stable, next to the crib and laid his. Mira's tense head quickly relaxed. It became customary for them to go wherever Mira went. Guardian, and throughout the day, curled under or next to her crib. When she sobbed in her stroller, he would suck her hand until she burst out laughing or fell back asleep as Grace sat. Guardian would lie while holding Mara in her arms, beneath them like a silent, loyal shadow. One morning, while Grace was folding, while doing clothes on the couch, She heard sharp. She turned in surprise as she squealed with laughter. A tiny plush ball was being nudged by Guardian, pointing his nose in the direction of Mira's crib, gently bouncing off the rail, and Mira erupted in laughter, her first. Grace put a palm to her chest and laughed. "You're crying too," she muttered. Then followed the statement, "You're already a team." The night that cemented that reality was. Grace was sound asleep at around 2 in the morning, when Guardian abruptly ran out of his. Then he smelled at Mira at the crib. Afterward, Mira gave a low, agitated bark. Was not breathing. Guardian let out a louder bark, sprinted to Grace's room, and leaped on, pulling at the blanket on the bed with his teeth, and then barking more quickly and sharply. Grace startled Guardian awake with what she followed him to the cot, heart pounding. Mira's lips were blue and her face was crimson. Without hesitation, Grace dialed 911 with shaking hands and started CPR as the paramedics were led by the dispatcher. Reached just a matter of minutes, Mira had experienced a severe allergic response, uncommon, abrupt, and hazardous later at. A pediatrician came to the hospital, Grace with a serious, sincere expression. If, even 5 minutes later, you had located her, she wouldn't have made it, he said, shaking his head. Grace was seated next to Mira's medical bed, keeping the infant's hand in one throughout the night, and the Guardian's paw in the opposite. "It once more," she muttered to him. "Saved her once more." The dog remained still, but his gaze remained fixed on the cot. He didn't require the words. He was a Guardian in intent rather than name, and the community was never alone in Mira. The center was a hive of activity, hovered over booze covered in baked products, handcrafted crafts, and vibrant signs with the words, "Hearts for Hope, a fundraiser for children who are orphaned." In the middle of everything was a little fenced stage, and its tail is softly wagging next to it, tongue out when sitting comfortably in pants. Wearing a unique red vest, the guard. Miracle, embroidered with white lettering. Dog, he would not only become a local legend, but, in order to protect little Mara from the storm or forewarning Grace during her health examination situation, but just for being there as living evidence of love, loyalty, and instinct could flourish even after. Children waited in line to take photos with him, some brought sweets. Mara, who is almost a year old, is hugged by others, sat beneath a shaded umbrella in Grace's lap. Her guardian licked her fingers while she giggled. The occasion was calm and happy until it wasn't amid the laughter and music. The guardian's ears immediately became rigid, sprang ahead, his snout raised into the. He stood in the air, sniffing attentively. At a distance close to the rear entrance, a man went clumsily against the flow of people, wearing a dark outfit with a low-cut cap. In his jacket, he held something. Guardian, his eyes darted to the left and right, roared, initially going unnoticed, but when, reaching for the inner pocket, the man started to approach the display table. For items up for auction, Guardian jumped into. He jumped over the tiny stage, fence barking loudly, quickly, and unrelentingly. A man winced, and the audience became alarmed. Guardian's abrupt reaction didn't. He hesitated before charging and catching the man, just as his weapon-wielding hand appeared. What looked like a little handgun. The shepherd sprang forward and bit down on the weapon fell because of the man's forearm. Screams fall to the earth with a clatter. Parents yanked their kids out. Grace ducked and grabbed Mira in the back. Behind a table nearby, the man attempted to shake Guardian away, but the dog remained steadfast, growling ferociously, causing him to descend to the pavement in a matter of seconds after 2 off-duty officers who had been present at the weapons were drawn, and the event was subdued. The suspect later, police verified the man had a violent and thieving past. Events on that particular day, his intention was unsure, but whatever Guardian possessed prevented it before anyone was harmed. The video went viral throughout the area. A Guardian spoke with news anchors about once a stray protected an infant in the. This time, Storm has done it again. Safeguarding a whole throng, the headline. "We are heroes," the evening news reported. 2 lives were rescued by dog. Guardian was praised once more as a guardian. A miraculous as a representation of all that is pure and Innately competent, he didn't revel in the spotlight. I had no idea what the world was. All he wanted was to watch after the chaos, was to lie at Mira and go back to her side, feet, and take a break because the Guardian is. Being a hero wasn't about making headlines, about keeping an eye out, protecting, and never exposing anyone he cared about to danger. The years went by slowly, as though the storm that formerly united them had blown away long ago, leaving just Grace's light was once a woman who. Now, I walked alone and quietly to work, traveled through life with two friends who had altered everything that she owned. Mira was formally adopted the year she turned 2, tearfully signing the documents. In her gaze, and the Guardian seated faithfully at her feet, as though he also recognized the importance. Guardian was not. He was family, not simply a miraculous dog. To commemorate the voyage that started on that, Grace launched the Mara during a stormy night, and the nonprofit Guardian Project offered both long-term and emergency assistance. Assistance for stray animals and abandoned youngsters. Animals, the goal was straightforward: give second chances to everyone on the planet. Forgotten, the company thrived. Shelters partnered with volunteers in droves. Fundraisers are completely booked out everywhere you examine the rescue center's interior, were pictures of Guardian's Mira that the impossibility and muddy styrofoam be to life-saving connection. Then came the day of the celebration honoring animal bravery. The town square served as the venue, where, on the tiny wooden stage, the Guardian stood, his clothing shimmering in the sunlight is a unique medal dangling from a ribbon of blue velvet. Grace wrapped Mara in her arms around his neck, arms as she moved in front of the microphone, said she wasn't trained to save lives, just lifeless, voice breaking, when no one else arrived, someone else was observing. He did, and as a result, we are a family, daughter. As the audience cheered, Mira squirmed from Grace's embrace and rushed to protect her and wrapped her arms around his. "My puppy hero," she exclaimed, her neck tight. Smiling, the audience cheered and laughed once again, but Guardian simply sat there staring, leisurely, serene tail wagging as though he knew years later that a soft. On a May afternoon, the backyard was crowded with the pleasant sound of tiny paws. 3 puppies' caretakers were chased by yelps, butterflies, and one another under the Guardian. A broad oak tree was lying in the grass, aged, with a graying muzzle but friendly eyes. As usual, the Mira next to him now has 5 lay on her stomach while holding a picture book, putting a gentle touch on Guardian's back. The other pages that turn, you still adore. Stories, huh? She smiled and whispered. Guardian closed his eyes and huffed quietly. And at that precise moment, everything was serene. There was no loneliness, no storm, and no box. Just the silent heritage of a dog that had given everything and received everything in return. Some souls are not taught how to reciprocate. They are born knowing how to love or protect, even when nobody is looking, because of heroes, the world has turned its back. Occasionally have 4 legs and he had no name but a heart that never gives up. Despite having no house or collar, he had a heart, courageous enough to save a soul and a baby, devoted enough to keep her safe for a life from chilly streets to a child's favorite spot in their heart. Guardians served as a reminder that real heroes don't seek praise, they just demonstrate up repeatedly. If this tale moved your heart, remember to like and share, and sign up for Amazing Paw Stories, where we deliver the strongest, authentic tales of love, devotion, and the animals that permanently alter our lives. Because occasionally the world is saved by those who throw it away.